Hello, and welcome to AGX Media. Today we're joined by Bob Iaccino, the Chief Market Strategist for Path Trading Partners. He's also a veteran trader, having spent the last 26 years in commodities, futures, and Forex markets. Bob, thank you for joining us.
Good to be here, man.
Now, there's been a lot of political turmoil in the world as of late. We've got the US formalizing its impeachment inquiry, Brexit in the UK, protests in Hong Kong, and much, much more. In your opinion, how are these major geopolitical events impacting investors' risk appetite? Are they looking for safe haven assets?
Well, I think that was true probably about a month and a half ago, and I think a little bit of sort of contentment has set in, and I actually think that's a bit of a mistake. The market is not responding to the progression of the impeachment inquiry, moving into impeachment hearings. Congressman Adam Schiff said he thinks that as early as the first 2 weeks of November, you'll start seeing transcripts of testimonies within the inquiry for the impeachment. And the market is ignoring it. And I'm not sure that that's such a mistake. But one of the things we're seeing as we continue to see new highs in the equities is less participation. Goldman Sachs put out a note last week noting about $100 billion in outflows in US equities. And at the same time, prices moving up. Well, that to me seems to be a reach for yield. Now, we just had a good non-farm payroll and we just had a rate cut from the Federal Reserve, but yet the yield curve flattened. That tells you that the longer end of the yield curve is looking for no inflation. All of that is kind of trouble looming. When that trouble actually hits, I don't know. But I think we're probably going to have a little bit of a grace period, and then people are going to move back into those safe haven assets.
Fair enough. Now, additionally, China has suggested that it may wait until after the election to find a larger resolution to the ongoing trade war. Do you believe that stalling this war further will impact the commodities and equities market?
I do, and the issue there is the Chinese haven't said that officially, right? That's Chinese officials speaking to Bloomberg was how the report came out. That's critical because as much as the Chinese, I believe, would want to negotiate with somebody else, and that's, by the way, I don't make political statements. So it seems like anytime I say something on Twitter, somebody says, you hate Trump. And then right after that, somebody says, you love Trump. And it's neither in the context of these conversations. But from a perspective of them negotiating with him, whether it's because he's impatient, I'll just leave it at that, or whether it's because he's a tough negotiator, is irrelevant to me for the purposes of a discussion about markets or assets. I think the issue becomes for China that if they made that their official position, it would be very difficult if he did win again, because of certain personality traits that he at least has shown us over the last 3 years, where he could get even tougher if he wins again. So I don't think that's going to be the official position. I think Trump's going to leave whenever the phase one signing is in a good mood. He's going to announce that things are going well. They're working on phase two. But privately, I actually believe the Bloomberg story.
Now, despite the contentment that you've just described, some analysts have been calling for a recession. We are already over a decade since the previous one, and in the previous recession, cryptocurrencies were not yet available to people. If a recession were to hit, do you believe that people would treat assets like Bitcoin as safe havens?
I think they're already treating Bitcoin as a safe haven asset. To me, cryptocurrencies, first of all, I'm a massive supporter of the entire space. Let's just get that out there. And as a traditional market guy, you mentioned that, I've been in the market for about 26 years now. As a traditional market guy, I tend to be characterized as someone who wants to hold on to that old way, and I'm not. I'm a massive supporter, and we can go into why if you'd like. But I think people have already migrated, especially into Bitcoin. When you see the responsibility of global governments, I think it's only a natural progression. The issue I have is that in the short term, there's either adoptability or safe haven, and usability of the actual Bitcoin specifically as an actual currency. We're not there yet on a broad scale. We're getting closer. But from a perspective of safe haven, I think we're there. And I think the public perception of that is starting to be tilt toward the positive. The second thing is it's a non-correlating asset. It doesn't correlate to gold. It doesn't correlate to other safe havens. It doesn't correlate to equities, at least as of yet. It doesn't even have a perfect inverse correlation. And that's a massive positive. When you have something that performs completely differently, it can be one thing that saves a portfolio if you balance things correctly. So I think the long answer is what I just gave you. The short answer, yes. I think it's becoming a better and better place to look at in situations like that. I'm on board with a recession, by the way. I've recently flipped. If you watch any of my recent TV interviews, I kind of waffled on it. My most recent Bloomberg that I did, I said, I'm looking for one. I'm just looking for a mild recession. Sometime we might already be in it, but I think we'll come out of it by the third or fourth quarter of 2020.
Let's transition over to metals. We're seeing gold hover around that $1,500 mark. Do you think this shows how uncertainty is still present in the financial markets?
From a perspective of gold itself, I'm not. Gold is a terrible inflation hedge historically. It's viewed as an inflation hedge, but if you match it up to actual inflation, it performs very well. It performs prior to actual inflation coming on. So gold, to me, is becoming more and more a crisis hedge. And I don't think the recession we're going to go into is a crisis. There may be a pop in gold at some point, but I think it's going to be less than we've seen in the past. By crisis, I mean like the recession of 2009, which was horrible, or something on a global military scale, which is possible. Then people will flock to gold and they'll actually have some kind of staying power. I'm actually, precious metals are more of a fan of silver, to be honest, simply because the gold silver ratio is so blown out. It got today to the lowest level since January of 2019, which is a good thing. And it also has industrial uses. So if we get a manufacturing renaissance from the manufacturing recession we're in, silver will benefit more than gold will, at least from a perspective of the two. I'd rather be long silver and short gold at the same time than long either one.
So then, in the short term, are you as bullish on silver's price action, or do you feel like it's more of a long-term play?
I call it medium term. Now, understanding that I'm a trader, my origin is actually from the trading floor, then high risk, high reward hedge funds after that, and transitioning into what I do now, which is institutional analysis, et cetera. Um, I would say more medium term. Silver futures contracts settling above 18 2 days in a row now. That was a pretty good thing, in my opinion. 18 is not only a psychological level, but there's plenty of resistance that we needed to get through. And then again, if gold continues to hold, silver's going to catch up to it. So I am much more bullish silver than I am gold. If you ask me to, if you forced me to take a position in gold, I'd lean toward neutral. I wouldn't go short, but I certainly would rather be long silver than gold.
Bridging the two worlds we've spoken about today, metals and cryptocurrencies, what are your thoughts on asset and metals backed projects that take these commodities and essentially turn them back into liquid money?
One of the negatives, obviously, of the precious metals is that they're not as liquid as currency. They're more liquid than real estate, but they're not as liquid as currency. And also, there's a massive loss when people try to convert them into spendable money, because most people just go to a gold broker. Here in Chicago, they're up and down Wabash Avenue. You go to a gold broker and you lose a big chunk. You can see where gold's trading 1,500, and you go into a gold broker and they give you 1,475 for it, which is just awful. So I do like the idea. If I'm being completely honest, I think the jury is still out for how many cryptocurrencies are going to be um, usable. But I would certainly say that a precious metal backed cryptocurrency has an easier, what's the phrase I'm looking for? It's much easier to explain the value of it to your average investor. And again, that's part of the hurdle that cryptocurrencies have. People will use a credit card, but they won't understand a digital transaction, which essentially a credit card for the most part is a digital transaction backed by a bank. So I think one of the value proposition is what I was looking for. A precious metal backed cryptocurrency has a much easier to explain value proposition than just your average, oh, here's our digital currency and this is what we're doing with it.
Well said. That's all the questions we have for today. Do you have any final thoughts for investors?
Yeah, I think when you watch the Facebook hearings in front of US Congress, you saw the main obstacle to cryptos in general. And I think it was Senator Mark Warren, but I'm not positive about that, said basically we lose control in the way of sanctions if currencies become purely digital and not based in a country. That to me is a massive positive and a massive negative for government. So that's where the fight comes. And I think the people that are believers from a philosophical and an ethical perspective of cryptos, that's where the problem lies.
Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us for our interview with Bob Iaccino of Path Trading Partners. Hope you enjoyed the show. As a reminder, if this is your first time, please subscribe to our channel and check out agxpay.com to learn how the power of modern silver money can help you claim financial freedom. Take care.